Assalamu alaikum, my dear viewers. Welcome to an episode with Lantern of Light today. You see, the experience of emotion is a fundamental part of human consciousness. Imagine how different our conscious lives would be without such an experience as joy, anger, fear, disgust, pity, anxiety, and even embarrassment. And emotion is a human way of putting a meaningful label on our experiences. And we do it so unconsciously. Emotions also help us to communicate with others, such as when we feel sad and we need someone to help us. They can also help us to act quickly in important situations. So our emotions dictate how we react to situations, decide where to focus our attention, and decipher information in itself. And neuroscience has proven that emotions significantly influence our cognitive functions, including the decision-making, our problem-solving skills, and the impact it has on our learning experiences in life. So how we interpret and respond to the world around us and how we use these emotions is a really key study that is happening today in the world. And neuropsychology is a big thing today and quite popular. So understanding our emotions is an important part of even good mental health. And this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. And therefore, we at Lantern of Light thought it would be a really good idea to understand our emotions and see how they affect our lives and what is out there to be able to help us to give us a good well-being. So today with us, we have the very intelligent brother RTT Kanji, who is popularly called Coach Kanji. Is that right?
I believe so. That's the new name I've been coined with. So yeah, over the last few years. So yeah, so some may not be known.
Joining us. Assalamu alaikum, brother RTT.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on, Sister Nika.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So he's a qualified rapid transformational therapist, right? It's called RTT today, yeah?
And RTT for sure, yes.
Sure, that's good. So RTT, and so today, inshallah, he'll give us an insight into how this therapy works and how RTT has helped him to reconnect with himself. So, brother Inayat, to start off, I just want to say that there are lots of therapies out there, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, and make not your own hands contribute to your own destruction. So if we are suffering in a certain way, we are told to actually go and, search for help or go to the doctor. So RTT is another way, another therapy that is now coming up to be able to help you for your well-being. Is that right?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I'm merely an alumni of the, if you like, franchise, because it was created by actually a therapist who was voted Britain's best therapist. And it's now flying all around the world and influencing so many people with her YouTube videos and everything other. So as you can imagine, in the modern world of video and the internet, I discovered her methodologies after having done a small amount of hypnosis, having gone through a little bit of NLP, CBT, the different, as you mentioned, therapies, which would be under the NHS services, psychotherapies, and for me, many of them hadn't really enabled me to at least conquer the issues I was facing personally. Though they had helped somewhat, they hadn't enabled me fully to, as you mentioned earlier, reconnect with myself and thus connect with God and everything other within my life. So RTT for me was just a godsend, if you like, because it just so well aligned with everything I'd already been taught as a Muslim. And beyond that, as I say, the way that this lady had packaged her years and years of therapeutic experience and practicing, for me, just made it so simplistic, effective, and one that I could think then, because I wasn't a therapist, I was doing something completely other, though my journey was bringing me here, that I could commit to this. And within a short period of time, I could help others too, like she had helped me as a patient.
So basically, it's kind of a tool for enhancing well-being in a way, right? It's just a tool. I mean, I know the word therapy can be quite daunting, but it's a tool that and a new modality for mental health problems as well. Is that something that it can cure?
Well, as I just mentioned, it is a therapy. One might want to avoid the word therapy, but essentially, what is therapy? I used to be an English teacher, and so language is at the key of my, my passions. And at the same time, it's the means of communicating to ourselves and to others. And I always say to my patients, the first and most foremost and most important conversation one must have is with themselves, right? The dialogue one has within their own mind.
Mm,
Um, and so to understand therapy, it's not a dirty word. Therapy is the act of just looking after oneself. When you're relaxing, you're exercising, you're working, you're studying. These are all different types of therapy: educational therapy, physical therapy, emotional therapies, mental therapy. So for me, yeah, it definitely is. You can argue a new modality, but like I said, it's more an amalgamation of all the sciences thus far, because it's not necessarily a monopoly on knowledge, but rather just a very clever way that she has brought together everything she's learned from her teachers. And it's just us passing knowledge on, like
mm,
everything within the world. We're just passing and
yeah.
transferring means of learning lessons, right?
And actually, when you come to think of it, that when we come to terms with our painful reality of ourselves, then we can actually even spiritually transcend our psyche, isn't it? So there are a lot of
Yeah.
forms of therapy, and therapy is permissible in Islam per se. The only thing is that one must bear in mind that any form of healing comes from Allah alone in that sense, but you're a conduit towards that healing.
But
So
I
can you,
mean, ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all energy, is the
yes,
creator of everything, right? So again, as I say, I don't see why there even a debate necessarily, because to look after oneself is to appreciate oneself and appreciate the gift you've been given as a creationism, right? As a creature on this earth. So therefore, that in itself is ibadah. To neglect oneself would be the opposite, right? So to think that, again, the idea that I can only heal through God, what does that mean? Is it only through ritualistic prayer? Is it only through certain methodologies that are prescribed? Or is it the well-being of one internally, emotionally, one's nafs, the internal process itself?
That's so powerful because muhasaba is actually that transformation internally. So anyway, let's see what RTT is. Could you just sort of debunk that this word RTT and what it
Mhm.
means,
Yeah.
so we can understand it a bit better?
Yeah, sure, sure. So as the name suggests, rapid transformational therapy, it is indeed that. It's short, sharp sessions, if you like, where you have a presenting problem, whatever that be. It could be a major, could be a minor. Often when it is a major, you get to the root of everything and you can just eliminate it within a few sessions, because you're essentially regressing somebody to the memories that created that emotion, the root of those emotions that then snowball through your life. Because when you feel those emotions again, always subconsciously brings you back to certain memories and feelings you had, and therefore amplifies the emotion. And if it was a minor issue, often, again, it's even more simplistic because it rapidly occurs. However, often you find that that's symptomatic sometimes for more major issues. So the whole process, it's one that some come in and say, right, I just want a couple of sessions and eliminate this. And then they're with me for a little while doing several further sessions on different presenting problems. But the key is each presenting problem should only take 2 to 3 sessions maximum, because you're literally going back to the origins, rather than in talk therapies, always listening to the critical mind and the voice that is actually just symptomatic of the emotion, has been created by the emotion.
Kind of weeding out what is causing that emotion.
That's the amazing analogy one uses in the initial stages of the transformation. It's like
Right.
pulling the weeds out completely and replanting new seeds.
Yeah, and somebody might say, how can you just pull the weeds? It takes hard work to pull those weeds out, right?
Well, again, I think it's like anything, when one understands it, understanding is power, right? So,
Yeah.
unless I'm a gardener, I might struggle, but if I'm a gardener, I'll find it very easy, right? So in the same way, this is what we're encouraging people to understand themselves. Before we try to understand the external, understand the internal, and then the external becomes a value rather than a trade or a fear, even in the Islamic sense, right? You find the worth in things, as opposed to you're just doing it for that contractual basis of that which is external from you, or what might happen to you. It is really understanding this is of benefit to
Mhm.
me, because 0 to 7, we're told in Islam, like, how important those years are from a parental standpoint and from the child's standpoint. So when often I'm with patients, clients, and they're regressing to those scenes, 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, it, for me, is very telling. And that's why it's so important that we're mindful of it. But it doesn't mean that if in our childhood mistakes occur, humans are flawed, and not everything goes according to plan, in the archetypal sense of what a perfect upbringing would be, then we can always work in reverse. And that is the benefit of RTT, because we literally, like a detective, go and view the scenes in the subconscious rather than the conscious mind within hypnosis.
So what I'm hearing is that you have this inner experiential perceptions and your external reality combined together to give you an increased receptiveness and responsiveness to what's happening in your life, basically. So you're going deeper and understanding that. Of course, I just like to know how you actually do the RTT. So it sounds very great, but what do you actually do with it?
Well, again, one would have to experience the process with me as a client, obviously, to fully understand it. But I can give you a brief kind of synopsis or understanding. So in essence, we have a small consultation to understand the key concerns. And then within that, I look at the triggers, the symptoms, the habits that one has formed. I look into their childhood, just as I say, for a short period of time, because we're still talking to the critical mind at this stage. And then we look at what would life look like without the problem? What would life look like if you had everything you wanted? As we say, like, if I gave you a magic wand and you waved it, say, what would happen? What would you want your life to look like? So that's the brief we kind of address in the conscious state. Then straight away we go into hypnosis. Because as I say, the conscious mind, the critical mind, is actually what's brought them here in the first place. That's the negative voice, or the voice which they're battling with. So to listen to it for too long would be counterproductive, right? So one then, as I say, goes into hypnosis, and we immediately, once someone has had their deepeners and they're in a place of suggestibility, and we'll talk about what hypnosis is, because essentially hypnosis is a natural state of the mind. We have different stages of being when we're growing in life, and we also have different stages of the mind that then kind of evolve from that. But we'll discuss that in a moment.
It's so amazing when you say that it's a natural state, and someone might say actually it's using the jinn or something like that. So.
Well, if that's the case, the jinn's driving me home each day, right? Because when you do something in autopilot, you're doing it in hypnosis.
Okay, so it is a natural state then.
Yeah, no, all it is a pacifying of the critical brain, of that left-sided brain that talks
That's
to us,
really
analytical,
interesting.
logical. It's going back to intuition, and it's being more passive, suggestible. When you watch a film, when you watch television, you're passive, you're suggestible, you're in hypnosis. That's why cinemas, they create that environment even to amplify it, so that you don't get distracted, and you can take in the information, right? So in a similar sense, there's many states of hypnosis. But as I say, we'll park what I was speaking about a moment. So imagine we're in the state of hypnosis at the moment. Before we get into how we utilize hypnosis. So look, 0 to 2, we're talking about the delta state. It's a sleep state where a child literally is a sponge, but sleeps loads, as we all know. Right?
You mean as a kid, 0 years?
Yeah, 0 to 2 years old, they're in a state called delta state, right? We all have this because we all go to sleep, right? But if you see the amount, and that's why also we talk about when you listen to things in your sleep, you can be suggestible. That's why people go to sleep with Quran, other things, because your brain is operative, right? It's actually repairing your body. That's another sidetrack of the sciences. But so it's a massively important thing, the delta state. Then thereafter, you have the alpha state. Now, the alpha state is the imaginary. It is the suggestible, as we said. This is the hypnosis state. And that occurs 0 to 7. 2 to 7 specifically, because the critical mind has not even awoken. Most of us, if you try and recollect your memories, you won't remember the talkings of your mind till generally after that age. It's a more visual state of being, a state of being where, as I say, everything is believable. So that alpha state, as I say, is in our brain, and we all retain our imagination. we all retain our ability to be highly suggestible. You know, if I say to you, eating good, nutritious food, and I explain to you the process and I show you the science of it, you would be suggestible to that idea, right? It's the same thing in that you're using your imagination alongside your logic. And then that's where we have then the last thing, the theta stage of the mind, the theta state of the mind, which is our operative critical mind. But it seems most of us only operate in that nowadays. And it feels like we're disconnecting from the other parts of our mind to some degree. But yeah, as I say, the point of hypnosis is that we bypass the theta, we go to the alpha so that we can access all these subconscious memories that have been sitting in the back of our head that some of us don't even recollect, but yet we're operating on because of the emotional kind of recurrence of that memory.
Sorry to jump in, but so hypnotism can have your client regress into the past, and you can find what is actually causing the psychological disturbance as such. Can you get to
because as I say, it's kind of unleashing memories that you've purposely kind of like withheld from yourself as a survival mechanism, because the brain is amazing like that. You know, we've survived on this earth for many years for a reason, right? Because our brain is able to keep us safe and alive and secure, even in arguably situations which we would say rationally it doesn't need to do. But because it's learned that behavior, it will keep doing that. So for instance, if I got run over when I was young, it might not be rational to say that I should never cross a road again, but my brain might try and protect me and create and build a fear because I don't want to die. I don't want to be in that situation again. That's its intuitive, primitive kind of behavior, right? It is us with akal and rationality that then can utilize that to kind of balance it. But ultimately, if you can't move the emotion from the first scene, the first memory, it's very difficult then to address all this critical thinking later.
So you actually now I get it. So you're going into that into your past, and would you now reframe those emotions?
Indeed, and that's where you now get to what we do with the hypnosis. So once we pull up a few scenes, I'm telling you, my alumni are going to shoot me for like giving away all the secrets here. But nonetheless, it's important. It's important. It's important. So just to finish my flow of thought. So if that's fine. If I was, as I say, like in hypnosis with the client, the client is in hypnosis, and we've regressed to those 3 scenes, we now have to weigh them up and see the patterns almost together, right? So we're viewing it, reviewing it like we're watching it, because some of it can be quite emotional. So that's why it's a safe space. You're with somebody, you're not alone, and they're almost constantly engaging with you through question answer. So they're not asleep. It's not like the Paul McKenna, television shows of the past where one thinks that, that is, and we can go into that. That is pure acting. As an actor, I know that. That, for instance, there's certain people you wouldn't even hypnotize, because if someone is stubborn, they're not going to be suggestible. If someone cannot relax and have heightened relaxation, sometimes it's impossible to get them even, because they're fighting internally. They don't want to, because it's to some degree you have to not be in control fully. You have to accept. Right. And this is actually the journey of healing as well, acceptance. Some people are highly, in a state of control due to their fear, as I call false expectations appearing real. So this hypnosis, when you bring about these 3 scenes, you will see a pattern of occurrence. And as I say, it's in the wording, because I'm the lead now in the kind of the narrative, because their critical mind's asleep. They're just listening to my words. I can almost unpick and lead them towards their own memories, where they previously, as I say, their critical mind would have protected them and put them away. So we go into those memories, find the patterns together, and it's they then who almost see in a scene where they weigh them up against the presenting problem. Oh, okay, that was causing me all of this, but that's not happening to me anymore. And now I'm very different. And it's a real kind of relief moment where often it's like a weight has been lifted, that realization, because like I say, they're so deeply rooted, these memories, they've forgotten about.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And thereafter, then we do the transformation. And there's lots of tools I have in a toolbox specific to the individual's needs. So if it was a physical ailment, we might do the healing vortex, where you're literally looking at the internal spirit, how it creates ailments, and you're talking to the mind and the soul to eradicate that, because often when one cannot express themselves, the body will express it for you. And so thus, as we know, Islamically, it's a holistic process. This, God has gifted us a body, so we have an amana. So it's in all of that understanding, it really is, in my opinion, the doctor is within. Yes, we can take a pill. Yes, we can do certain things as a stopgap. However, when we talk about cure, the cure is only from within, because as you said at the start, it comes from God, right? So that reconnection, that refining of oneself, forgiveness, getting rid of your pain, getting rid of your bitterness from the past, things that happened to you, all sorts of other kind of emotive kind of imprisonment. It just alleviates so much. And so, as I say, there's other tools like It's Not Me, where we repetitively talk about the fact that it's not me, addressing those past scenes. There's others where you go to the home of the person, you show them the worth of their own home in the current environment, you merge the child with the adult, you upgrade the child. There's so many different things. And then at the end of all of this, we do the transformational recording, which is a short 20 to 15 minute piece, let's say, which they then would listen to every day for a minimum of 20 days, if not 40, as we know, numerically, the importance of creating habits. And as I say, they can listen to it at night to fall asleep, or they can listen to it in the daytime when they're feeling like they're struggling, or just at their ease, just to repeat, never delete. Because if we've talked to ourselves for years in certain negative manners, which have then created behaviors which we don't actually want for ourselves, it needs to at least occur 40 times, right? And this is where, when someone thinks, why didn't it work? Or, certain people feel like it's not a cure, there is work to be done on the patient's part too. And it's not necessarily just a flicking a switch. It is a case of understanding is power, which is then freedom. So one has to really want to do the work as well. So hence often with the recommendation at the end of the line, at the end of the NHS, when the NHS has basically not been able to help somebody, where they've gone through all the processes, then unfortunately they come to us. I wish they would come to us at the outset, but at this current stage, as you said, it's a new modality, but this is where we're finding many, many, many results, because as I say, it's healing lives and it's doing it right.
Yeah, because they say physical symptoms are driven by the mind as well, how you think and how you feel, and there's a vicious circle. But I'm just from what you said, it's beautiful that you're saying that you're going into a subconscious state and then removing whatever is the negative state. So somebody might say, this is this positive psychology thing. Forget what's happened and just move on. Think positive, and things will work out. There's this secret, manifest yourself. How much of that stuff is like kind of connected to RTT? So is it a positive psychology here? Because there's a lot going on about gratitude, thinking positive in your life, and that could change your. But like you're saying, if there's something which is still niggling at you, just being positive may not help.
Well, you're not wrong, but at the same time, it's nuanced. So, as you just mentioned, positive affirmations alone is just a reciting, right? They're just words, if done without emotional understanding, right? However, with even a desire, a want, a drive, that's an emotion, right? It's essentially a feeling, right? You can use different lexis, semantics to describe it, but it's a feeling, right? When you're motivated and you're driven, you're passionate, you find worth in something for yourself. So even if you don't quite understand it or believe it as such, even that, along with the recitation, can do what? NLP, and this is what I mean. It's not kind of, airy-fairy mysticism necessarily, though there is an element of mysticism in it, because as I say, all energy is physics, it's quantum physics, which God created, right? We're just describing it through theory and, hypothesis as scientists, but essentially it's God's law. So within that, me talking to myself in a positive manner is NLP, which is a science which the medical system recognizes and they advise you to utilize when you go through the system. It is just that, as I said at the outset, Marissa's combined everything. I remember going to a psychotherapist who was using CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because often when one's trapped in the mind, if you come out of the mind, you utilize the body somewhat, it can quieten the mind, and it can enable you almost to fake it to make it somewhat, right? Because the
Yeah.
mind is so clever, it will produce dopamine, it will do these different things at different points to ensure that you are in essence matching the behavior to the feeling. But sometimes when you are disconnected to oneself, you can't operate from a place of intuition to know that first. Or if I do this because I feel this way, I will think this way. It's often done in reverse. Why am I thinking like this? And this is why I say, understand one's emotion. As Imam Ali says, in understanding emotion, you will understand God to some degree, right? I'm paraphrasing, right? Obviously, but you know, it's that kind of thinking.
You okay?
Yeah, no, that's what I was just saying. That
No,
was my mic drop.
great.
That was my mic drop, Auntie. Is that kind of thinking, as I say, it's in
Yeah,
understanding one's emotion.
Yeah,
You truly
because
will understand God,
yeah,
because then you understand creationism. You understand your fellow man, you
yeah.
understand your partner, you understand your children, you understand the flaws in the world in terms of, you know, all the heavy kind of issues that are going on. And as when you talk about the secret, the manifestations, you know, the other therapies or other books and writers are kind of ascribing to people. Remember, it's a bank of knowledge for civilization, and we're all dipping into the pot. Where the origins are is down to the individual's interpretation.
So
I personally believe it all comes from this Abrahamic belief system, right? And many of our Nabis, our Rasuls, our messengers would have taught these. You know, when we talk about Nabi Isa being able to heal people, how? How can one heal physicality? If physicality is not connected to energy first and foremost, if we are not just a physical casing of energy, does that make sense?
it's just a placebo effect these days with physical illness, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, you're touching on subjects of my passion, so I could keep ranting, but yeah, ultimately, I talk to my doctor friends a lot about this.
Because the self-talk, it's a marvel that gives us adaptability and change as well. So what we tell ourselves every day is going to be, so this kind of, like you're saying that you make them listen to something, right? So is it kind of a positive affirmation, or what is it that I have to listen to for 40 days?
Well, this is quite beautiful as well, because within it, you're utilizing the words of the individual rather than your own.
Okay.
So whilst you know, it has aided me somewhat, you know, having been an actor and a presenter before and things like that, in, you know, just delivering the voice, because obviously you need to have an ability. That's why not everyone can do this. I can teach somebody to self-hypnotize to some degree, but again, they are skill sets that are needed by specialists, because there is a skill in regards to even the delivery of it, right? So my voice is the assistant, right? It is the sonic sound that relaxes you and obviously keeps you in that state of hypnosis. However, the words I am actually putting together based on what you've said in the session.
Okay.
So that when you're listening to it, it's a combination. You're now used to my voice as a therapist and navigating these issues of trust, because often these are issues which they might have not told anybody. So we've already formed a special bond. And that's why it is, again, important, the person you choose as your therapist. It can't just be anybody who knows RTT. It still has a special place, because this is all energy, essentially, that we were talking about, right? And that's why I'd steer clear of even when we talk about modalities and things like that. For me, like I say, it's so in tune with all other thinkings and sciences and religion. This is just about healing. But ultimately, in the transformation, as I say, when we talked about the initial sheet of notes which I might take on what do you want, life without the problem, and then that which we've also discussed in hypnosis, I utilize all of that to create a transformational recording that they would then almost feel is their own words, them talking to themselves to some degree. It's so interesting that even though it's my voice, because it's their words, emotively, how it brings about thoughts and feelings for them, because they always attest to it afterwards, saying, I really like the fact you kept using that word, because I use that word XYZ, you know, right? That makes sense.
That's so interesting, because really it's kind of self-healing rather than therapy, but a professional therapist is needed when one cannot use the cognitive and spiritual tools oneself. but
That's
require.
why I call myself a coach as opposed to, a therapist.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a therapist, but I'm coaching you. And that's what I'm saying. I can encourage you and teach you how to self-hypnotize, but you have to be committed to the process on all levels, even trying to understand sonically how your voice can affect yourself, right? Sound is so important. Everything is so important. But yeah, hypnosis can be taught to anybody.
And it's really self-orientation as well. So you're using their words and you're reorienting to themselves. So that's why they feel, oh, yes, this is me, in a way. And that can build a great transformation. So, just to, because you were talking about emotions, emotions are often confused with feelings, moods, but the three terms are not interchangeable. Is there anything that particularly RTT says about different feelings, moods, emotions? How do they sort of fit into the picture?
Well, I think to a certain degree, they're synonyms, are they not? I mean, they might describe different elements of their sensory experience, but essentially, I think it's all one and the same, what we're talking about contextually. The feelings might be the way we describe as I say, the sensory reaction, so if someone shouts at me, that's, again, as I say, it's sonic, it's vibrations. You do actually feel the anger of somebody. It's not just empty words, so it will make me have a feeling, which will affect my mood then. My mood could be described as my reaction emotionally now, the way I feel thereafter to the sensory experience. And then the emotion is what you would describe and communicate to another person when you want to offload, because this is the point. Emotions should be felt like waves, but we hold on to them a lot because we don't understand this. We confuse even these terms. We don't know how to describe it. So how are we then to express it to one another, to let go of it? So yeah, it's taken me 40 years to understand. So I don't expect others overnight, but yeah.
So basically, emotional experiences have a subjective experience. You get a physiological response. You get a behavioral, expressive response to it. You see, so there are different aspects of it.
Indeed.
So RTT, what kind of I wouldn't say kind of feelings or emotions or things I want to change. What would be the best things that RTT can help with, basically? Anxiety, stress, depression. I mean, some of the ideas, if you can give us, that would be really useful. I don't say.
No, sure. I'm enjoying this. This is my promotional moment, right? My one-stop shop. Thank you. I'll pay you afterwards for my marketing. But no, it's important because it can be, like I said at the beginning, it can be used for anything. It can be used for the most minor issue and then the most major issue.
Okay.
Somebody could say, listen, I'm a little bit untidy, I would really like to be one of those stepwood housewives, who can just make the house spick and span and at the same time cook the dinners, do all these different things. I'm a great mother, but I just sometimes I like to put my feet up. Sometimes I play a little bit with the kids when I should be doing it. It could be the most minute thing, which is a personal choice, because arguably you might not think that you need to change that. It's the individual who in that moment just says, I just feel like I want to do X, Y, Z, right? I feel it would be better for my life. But then you might find within that, actually, what is underneath that is a major issue. It might not be, but you could find a major issue under that it's really procrastination because one doesn't have the self-value or the self-esteem to engage in certain things, because when they were young, they were told they were lazy, or they were told that they were untidy and messy as people. So now they lean into their more empathetic areas where they have strength and value. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad mother. It just means there's certain skills they're lacking, but they could be creating real emotive issues for them. Then you could take it to a next level where you have someone who's very aware of what the presenting problem is, and it's a major trauma emotional issue. Someone who comes, look, I've had abuse in my life, or as you say, anxiety. Anxiety is merely fear of the future. It's worrying. It's not having control of what might happen, which none of us do, but it's the reaction to it. How people react to it. It's that idea that everything that's out of my control creates this thought pattern then, which is worry and anxiety. That's why I call it false expectation appearing real. And then that can manifest in loads of different things, like eating disorders are often forms of anxiety. It's the only thing I can control, what I put in my mouth. I can't control my external environment too much. So therefore I try and control that. OCD is a form of external control, trying to control one's thoughts through an external practice, trying to control one's emotion. So do you see my point? You know,
Yes.
you can have major issues and then you can have minor issues, as I say.
So if you had a major issue like a trauma, somebody might say rapid, it's been in there for so long. How can you rapidly change it for me? So could you sort of explain, kind of sometimes abuse or childhood traumas, which sometimes could be really deep rooted. So how can somebody, remove that within this rapid session?
So as I say, often it's memories that have been really buried deep. So if I were to ask you in the conscious state, you would never ever recall these memories.
Right.
You don't even think they're significant. That's the irony of it. I was the same. Like, I can tell you one of my memories, for instance, was being left alone at a school gate, when I was 4 years old, right? And I was with the headmistress, and the headmistress was saying, "Look, mum's very late. I might have to take you to my house." This is back in the 80s, right? Yeah, right. It was a small private nursery, right? But the point being, that memory became like an abandonment.
Oh,
I didn't even realize it.
realize, yeah.
But thereafter, then, like my mum used to tell me, by 7, 8 years old, I told her I don't want her to drop me to school. I want to go with my friends, because now it's a learned thing almost. Bless my mum. I know she doesn't mind me talking about her, because the only person I can talk about, patient confidentiality. But in the sense that it's interesting, because all it was is my mum was a working mum, and so as a young child, I was just going through that phase of, now I'm going to school, she's at work, who's picking me, who's dropping me, who's spending time with me. But that small thing, if then later on in life I have further rejections, further abandonment, can really amplify that emotion for me. Where somebody, let's say, who has a very steady 0 to 7, it doesn't have necessarily that issue of abandonment. Later on, when they're rejected or abandoned in simple terms of, I don't know, fired from work, or as I say, mentioned, I'm a divorcee. It doesn't necessarily have the same impact. It may be heavy in an emotion, because it's a heavy emotion, but it doesn't spiral the person, because it's not rooted in so many other feelings and emotions of the past.
0 to 7, which Islam says that's a really key sponging age, right? When then deep-rooted ideas sit in. I just wanted to ask you, Brother Inayat, you're saying that this came out. Was it something that came out in the RTT session that you didn't realize it was in there?
Yes, most definitely, most definitely.
Okay.
Because I would have put my issues down to, as I say, things that happen later in my life, major events that happen later in my life. And much of it is out there within my documentaries and television work. But for instance, I was unfortunately abused at 11, 12 years old. And so I would have thought that is the key issue. But interestingly, again, it was actually the reaction to it by other people more than that itself. Because again, it's not about the gentleman who did it to me. It's more about the people I'm attached to, the emotion, the loved ones, my community, and then how that makes me view myself. And then that was rooted in things before. Because if that which didn't happen before, maybe I wouldn't have even reacted in that way. Does that make sense?
7 and 14 years age, it doesn't imprint on yourself? Is that what you're trying to say? It's kind of more fluid?
Sorry, say that again. 7 to 14, did you say?
No, 7 to 14. So if something happens to you after the age of between 7 and 14, it's not that much of an imprint as there is between 0 to 7?
It's difficult to say, because some people do often have major events in later life occur to them. I think what it is look, we're talking about trauma, right? And trauma, it's not something where you can have kind of a comparative cups, it's very much an individual feeling.
True.
So if you can imagine, though, the younger you are, the more firstly you might feel it, because when you're young, often you don't even realize, you think the world revolves around you to some degree. You're so young, you don't understand that there's other perspectives, there's other minds, people don't all think the same, all these basic things. So when you're young, it's very much, you take so much meaning from it, number one.
Yes.
Number two, your mind and emotion is developing. So as we know, within, the Baligh stages and the Balughan, etc., you're not even ready for certain major experiences, if you like, right?
Mm.
You know, if I experience a violence when I'm in my 30s and I experience it when I'm 10, it's very, very different, right? So when you're having your first experiences, if those first experiences are traumatic, often you'll find it'll create patterns later on. But
Okay.
as I say, sometimes people are not even aware of the real origins, which seemingly are trivial, but are not. As I
Yes.
say, yeah.
Yeah, that is very interesting, because some things that are lying in us, we don't know, they may be dormant, but they're actually affecting our everyday lives that we have no clue about, right?
Indeed,
So
and that's why why I mentioned even the trauma cup thing, that you can't do comparatives, because somebody else, for instance, might have the same or similar trauma to you, let's say in their adult life. And often people say, well, why can't you just deal with it like that person has? And they'll use the example of
yeah,
somebody else who, oh, they've overcome it and look what they've achieved and what they've done and
true,
etc.
true,
But
true.
you don't know the narrative of their entire journey. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And within that race of life, you don't realize how early into the race all the stumbling blocks came, or all the traumas came, where all the pain came from. So as I say, we look to these individual situations or things that happen later on, but often I find with all my patients, it's always rooted in the early years.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So as somebody, all our viewers watching, someone might think, am I a good candidate for RTT? Is it something I should be going for? How would you evaluate if somebody is a good candidate, and what suggestion would you give to our audience?
Well, I think, I would suggest that everybody's a good candidate if they're
Okay.
willing, because like we said at the outset, um, therapy is just looking after oneself.
Yeah.
It's like when people say mental health, the word health now, everyone's very highly sensitive with words, right? Because maybe we're just all philosophers now. But it seems that the word health even can have negative connotations in mental health. But exercise is your physical health, like I said. So physical therapy, they're all just they're interchangeable. It's just looking after yourself. So therefore, like I said, whether it's a small, and everyone's flawed, nobody's infallible. So therefore, surely there's something within oneself that they're struggling with emotively. Because as I said at the outset, or I've said it in the past to you even off line, the human experience is essentially an emotional experience. We then just have a difference to other creatures in that we have a rationality to understand it.
Yeah.
Therefore, we just don't act upon it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd all be, as soon as we feel hungry, stealing food from each other, or taking, the primitive sense of what man used to be like, right? We've understood, we've civilized, we've rationalized our emotion to some degree, but maybe now we've disconnected. And this is why I would say that in the modern era of technology and everything other, the way that the society is going, I'm seeing more and more and more issues of the mind, which essentially are reversible. I'm not claiming that one can heal and cure people who have deep, medical diagnostics,
Yeah.
schizophrenia, bipolarism, different things. I would arguably say that you need to also seek, the knowledge of someone another specialist. However, when it comes to, the average human who, as I say, over time builds baggage, they change over time through the conditioning of life. Every single individual who falls into that category could benefit. As I say, from a major sense to a minor sense, because it is just enabling one to reconnect with themselves and then really have an emotive experience. Because often we're never present, it seems, in this modern era. We're always rushing like human doings as opposed to human beings. And so to really understand that this is every moment, this right now is an emotional experience I'm having with you. I'm getting glee from sharing something that will help you. I'm feeling good within myself that I'm bringing value to the world in some way or capacity. I'm engaging with you in a way that I feel bonded on the topic. This is all kind of emotions, right? And if I wasn't present with my emotion, if I was thinking about what I need to do afterwards, or I'm thinking always in that critical sense, like outcome all the
Yes.
time, it's very difficult to stay present with the current emotion. even to listen actively is a skill now, right? Because many can't in this world of TikTok and, you know, shorts and everything else. The concentration span, the stamina isn't there. So this is all, again, conditioning of the mind. And so I would say that we need it even more now rather than less.
So that we all need, like we are on a journey like a river, it collects rocks and, you know, mud and everything around the way. So we need to offload it at some point to
Most
actually
definitely.
reach that human perfection, isn't it? To be able to reach up, not perfection, but potential at least. And we
Well,
all,
as I like to say to my my mini masters, my mixed martial arts students, you know, like practice is progress, right? I don't know whether we'll reach perfection, but I'll definitely get some progress in the practice. And ultimately, you know, we're talking years, thousands of years of discussion, teaching, and experience being shared through book format, through everything other about the human condition. But yet it seems, let's say in the last 100 years, look how far technology has changed, right? Rapidly. But yet thousands of years of experience we have. And if you compare our advancements, it feels like we're regressing, you know, because before, where there wasn't technology, people were only concerned about with what is this that I am, you know, rather than what I can do, you know, why am I here in the middle of a desert, you know, what do I need to achieve with my purpose of living, right? Whereas now we're almost feeling like this is the purpose, this creationism, this modern society, you know, this capitalism corporate system that we've created, everything other, you know,
the artificial intelligence.
right, you know, I could go on and go on. I don't want to seem like a cynicist and that, you know, like and you know, a hippie, but it's definitely, as I say, interesting that many successful people are very out of tune with their emotion.
So what I'm hearing is that it's you know, everyone is a candidate for it. Anyone can try it out, and perhaps you know, increase in your betterment of your own self and well-being as well. And so how long does how long would a session last? What's the length of the time of any sessions? And if you were to do a therapy, what kind of how long do I expect to be with you or with a therapist for that matter? Do I need to spend 6 months?
So
Do I need to spend lots of money?
no. So look, so it's interesting because again, as I say, this is a system of learning and teaching that I've inherited. So there are like set guidelines for what we should charge or what we ought to charge, because again, compared to the other options that are out there, as I say, in the name, it's stated rapid. Therefore, if one said to you, I've been struggling all my life with food addictions, you know, and I said to you, well, so as I said, 3 sessions, each session's an hour and a half. So I say to you, within 4.5 to 5 hours, that will no longer be a major issue for you. You still have to manage it, and but the difference is you'll have the capabilities, the coping mechanisms, the understanding. It will no longer be a weight upon you, forgive the pun. It will literally be one of you understanding. So it's just now enacted, right? And that weight that was lifted from me, you know, that heaviness in the mind and physically on the shoulders of these emotions, when I eradicate certain presenting problems for myself in the process, when I was a student and I was practicing with my fellow students and with my teachers, it was amazing to see. Because as I say, within 3 sessions, whichever presenting problem it was, and I had lots, you know, self-esteem, you know, like, you know, confidence issues. I'm an actor, so I perform for a living, right? So I wore masks for a living, right? If that makes sense, you know, like many actors do, believe me, many performers deep down, because it's attention currency. Many of us who perform, we like the validation, we like to hear ourselves, you know, we like to be known, right? Because again, it comes down to that 0 to 7. Were you ignored? Were you given attention? Different things, you know, was your only means of love through attention? You know, so all these different things build the persona, and it's almost stripping ourselves of this external character that we've created. You know, the words are very interesting as well, because they're all indicative of the real meaning. But again, that's another thing, spells. But yeah.
That's really beautiful. So what somebody might ask that, okay, now you've lifted the weight. Is there any possibility that I can regress back and go back to that old self? Or is it, do you think it's completely stripped off after the sessions?
again, I would say it's to some degree, it's like exercise.
Okay.
So I now have the knowledge. I
Mm.
know how to keep fit. I completely know how to do it. And to a certain degree, I've experienced it as well.
Yeah.
I've been fit for a short period of time now. Yeah. And it usually happens with everyone. Everyone gets elated by it, you know, the change and everything else. But you have to still keep the practice up. Now, what I mean by that, it's not necessarily listening to the audio. It's not necessarily coming to me as a client anymore. It
Right.
is really understanding what we've done here. So for instance, every word brings about, as I said to you before, an energetic transference. You know, there's actually circuits going on in my head. And so before I even say it in sonic vibration, the thought is actually radiating energy, right? Because when you see a corpse, there's no energy, right? The rule is gone.
Yeah.
So my circuit is on even when I'm thinking. So those words I'm saying to myself, if I do not practice talking kindly to myself, no amount of listening to Coach Kanji's transformational recording for 10, 15 minutes will indefinitely cure you. It will short-term do something, but you have to start understanding. And that's why I say I'm a coach. It's not like a doctor, come to me, we do the session and then disappear. I've given you information. I've given you tools. I've sat with you for an hour and a half showing you the process of the mind. I've explained to you the science. I've shown you how to self-heal to a certain degree. I'll keep doing that for this presenting problem for a few sessions. But if it was like other counseling and talk therapies where you came to me for 3 years on the trot every single week, I might as well scrap the title and call it something else. It's just hypnosis and talking, right?
Wouldn't be rapid, would it? Probably.
It wouldn't be. And then I wouldn't have bought into the whole modality in the first place. Because like I said, I was at the end of the system and I was saying, what is going to change? And so, as I say, this is really about healing from within. So therefore, if I say to you, you fall over, bump your knee, you cut your knee, I show you how to heal it, how to put the plaster on, how to put the antiseptic, how to clean it, and you heal it completely thereafter. That wound's not going to suddenly just appear again, is it?
Yes, no, that's true. So the
However, you might fall over again and you might not do the process. Or
yeah,
you might really understand and be like, I know exactly what to do now.
Yes. Okay. So you're given the tools and you can use the tools at any time if you're there. So what kind of success rates have you seen? I know that you told me that you yourself is a product of the success of RTT.
Indeed.
So if you can
Walking advert.
Maybe some of your clients, because I know you keep saying that I'm so busy, I've got a client in between teaching your martial arts, and thank you very much for finding this time on Saturday afternoon.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
But if you can tell us what is the success rate, and if you want to share with us some of your successes as well through the RTT.
Yeah, most definitely. So I mean, again, with success rates, it's difficult to stay like, in a statistical notion, like I haven't necessarily done the mathematics, but all I know is from my experiential experience, which often is only the true thing that we can, testify to. So all my clients are repeat clients in the sense that they fulfilled the objective they set out. None of them dropped off halfway because it's so transformational. In fact, I had to encourage them to take breaks, so they could really process it, but they wanted to come back straight away. I'll say, see how the week goes, see how you feel. And as I say, because within 3 sessions, usually I would hope that that person may not even come back to me, right? However, as I say, many people have different complications, so some do. And even those that do, everything has built through word of mouth. I've done no advertising. I've not even got a website, I've got a very small Instagram page, but predominantly, as I said to you before, I worked as an actor and a TV presenter and a radio presenter. So that's where I had my initial following, if you like, in a marketing sense. So all of this was merely done on word of mouth and conversation a lot of the time, because it speaks to the soul.
Yeah.
So within that, again, as I say, I was convinced by, as I said to you, watching a Marissa Peer video, saw the Marissa Peer video, saw what she was doing to people in the audience, saw what she was doing in live sessions with people, what she was sharing. And I was just mesmerized. I was like, surely no. I was cynical, actually. I was like, this can't be. So then I investigated it further. And then when you see she's got 15,000 people, she's, you know, her alumni, therapists around the world. We're connected through, you know, this network all over the globe. And we're always sharing our patient stories and different things. And then more than that, it was the immediate healing that started occurring within my family and myself that told me, oh, wow, no, this is the real thing.
So you were
yeah.
you were actually a client of another RTT therapist?
Yes, so because the part of your study, because they want to debunk it, right? You know, like some other, you know, and this is the interesting thing, because in other therapies, you don't necessarily, you do a bit of role play, but it's not the same thing because you're not a clinical patient. But as I said here, this debunks the idea of one needing to be a clinical patient.
Okay,
Anybody can do it, right? And in our sessions, we're encouraged, don't do anything too heavy, because they wanted to prove the point that major to minor, anything can be solved. So for me, I'm a little bit unorganized sometimes, right? So that was one of my first ones. What is it about organization, you know? And it was interesting what came up. It's just my mum used to nag me a lot, you know, like, so because she's super productive, you know. So it's just, you know, but my point, I'm just joking, but you know, you understand my point in that, you know, it was interesting in that process. I started seeing changes in myself. And then when I started doing the heavier sessions, I was like, wow, these are issues, Auntie, I've been facing for 14 years, you know. And as I said, for, you know, people who take interest in my story will know that, you know, I've had a bit of a colorful life. So, you know, I'm not attesting to being a squeaky clean person, but this is like, you know, I'm always reminded of the story of Hor, you know, like it's about that journey, right? And within that, I found something that helped me reconnect to my faith, you know, because it filled in gaps, which I wasn't necessarily, not saying that they weren't there, but it was, I hadn't understood them, or I hadn't found the right means of connecting to it, or I'd understood it in theory, but not in reality, emotionally, you know. But when I lifted all these issues and I understood this is still around all the same concepts of forgiveness, you know, understanding how God brings gratitude and also, fills your life with things to be grateful for, but at the same time, without pain, you can't have joy, right? And it's just understanding the two spectrums of emotion, which I had never been able to deal with as a human. I'd really found it hard to deal with heavy emotions. So it's just interesting, as I say, that first and foremost, I healed. Then I started doing it to others. I therapized my mum. I had sessions with her, with other family members. Then I went to my friends. And then from my friends, I opened to the wider network of the public. And as I say, until now, children to adults, I haven't had a single negative review.
So that's really powerful, mashallah, because you've experienced it. Now you can be able to say, yes, it works, right?
Yeah, as I said, I believe so. And
yeah.
as I said, it is to different degrees for different people based upon the individual. But I think that's like anything, you know, everything is subjective. It's a personal experience.
So if somebody's watching and they feel that they would want to come to you, how do they get in touch with you?
So though I said I don't have a major, you know, public kind of presence at the moment, they obviously still can get me at Ample Therapy, AMPLE, by Ample suggests, artistic, mental, physical, life coaching and educational therapies. So Ample Therapy on Instagram. Alternatively,
brother,
say that again?
AMPLE. Can you say that again?
Yeah. AMPLE.
So
Ample, so artistic, mental, physical, life coaching, and educational therapies.
Oh, that's a lovely name.
As I said, because obviously, yeah, alhamdulillah, you know, because again, it's the journey, and this is all God's doing, right? I was one person who just kind of bumbled around looking for experience rather than a career, and alhamdulillah, it's all come together, because as I say, bringing my artistic elements, the mental, the physical, the martial arts, used to be a teacher, and then now this has all come together within life coaching as well, and rapid transformational therapy.
Sometimes Allah guides you to that place, right? And you don't know how come you reached here, but this is where you are at the moment. So alhamdulillah that you are able to help others in you know, reaching their full potentials and solving their problems, hopefully, inshallah. So I'm hoping that anyone who'd want to come to Ample Therapy.
Ample Therapy. Alternatively, obviously, my name is on the screen. Just find me on Instagram there. You'll, as I say, that was my more at the time, my more kind of like, you know, active platform when I was working within the media and has a larger following. So yeah, so please you can message me there, and then we'll take it further from email and WhatsApp. But as I say, yeah, at the moment I'm in full effect trying to help people reconnect with themselves and understand their emotions.
That's beautiful. Any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with our viewers? Anything you'd like to say, which we probably missed? I don't know if I've asked all the questions, but if there's something I've missed and you'd like to share, please do so now. Thank you.
No. I think everything we've talked about was purposeful because it was in the moment and it was meant to be. There's care and everything. I think, as we said from the outset, ultimately the human experience is an emotional experience, and that's why I landed on RTT. And I hope that people can understand beyond RTT just that point, because if we are kind to ourselves first, then we can be kind to others. And obviously, the Prophet came to perfect human character first and foremost. Before we think about all the tools that enable us to perfect our character, as I say, we really have to reflect on that point, perfecting human character. And as I say, it is an emotional thing first and foremost.
Yeah.
So inshallah, I hope that would be the takeaway from today.
Thank you so much. And of course, never give up hope of Allah's soothing mercy, inshallah,
Indeed.
which is always pouring down on all of us. So thank you very much. And
Thank you for
brother,
having me.
hopefully we can have a second session with more in-depth idea of RTT. But
Yeah, most definitely.
it's a lot. And I feel I should do it, but let's see, inshallah.
I'm holding you to it. I'm holding you to it. We've had our conversation, so inshallah we'll do it.
Tell us how much it costs us, but I think I'll leave that for our audience to come and find out from you. So inshallah, I think out there is a lot out there which is quite expensive, because I was trying to Google and some of the therapists charge a lot. Is that right?
Yeah, no, as I said, look, no, I don't want to leave people with bad salesmanship, right? But as I say, look, it's important to know, like I said, there's only 15,000 of us,
Yeah.
So it is a niche. And because, like we said earlier, some people can go to talk therapies for years, if you want to equate it financially, it could amount to so much money that route.
Yeah.
Whereas this may seem like a small lump sum, but if it's something that you're eradicating in a very short period of time that you've been dealing with for such a long time, how much do you put a price? What was the figure that you give that? And beyond that, as I said, you have people of different experiences. So if you go to Marissa, the person who created it, obviously you might need your life savings. But if you come to me, it might be more reasonable. You understand the point.
Thank you very much. And I think when we can name our feelings, we can gain power of it, and that power lightens us, as you said. So on that note, thank you very much, inshallah, and very, very appreciative of all the sharing that you've done about your life. And perhaps I will go and watch some of your shows. Are they on YouTube?
They are indeed on YouTube. Again, you can find it through my Instagram account initially if you can't find it on YouTube, but they should all be on YouTube.
Allah Hafiz. Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.